The diner smelled of burnt coffee and fried onions, a scent that clung to the faded red booths and the cracked linoleum floor like a stubborn memory. In the small town of Mercy, Ohio, Ruby's Diner was the heart of everything, a place where farmers, truckers, and high school kids nursing milkshakes swapped stories under flickering fluorescent lights. It was 6:47 p.m. on a chilly November evening, and Clara Hensley sat at the counter, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug, staring at a single-dollar bill tucked under the edge of her plate. Clara was 34, with tired hazel eyes and a braid that frayed at the ends like her patience. The dollar wasn't much, but it was all she had left after paying the electric bill, the rent, and the overdue hospital copay for her son Ethan, 8 years old, with a laugh that could light up a room and a heart condition that dimmed it just as fast. The doctor said he needed surgery soon, the kind of soon that cost more than Clara's waitress tips and part-time shifts at the gas station could ever cover. She pushed the dollar back and forth with her thumb, its edges soft from years of passing hands. It wasn't enough for a second coffee, let alone a miracle. But Clara wasn't one to wallow. She'd grown up in Mercy, raised by a single mom who'd worked 2 jobs and still found time to bake cookies for the church bake sale. Resilience was in her blood, even if it felt like it was running thin these days. "Clara, hon, you want a refill?" Ruby herself, 62 and round as a biscuit, leaned over the counter, her apron stained with ketchup and dreams. Clara shook her head, forcing a smile. "Nah, I'm good. Gotta get home to Ethan." Ruby's eyes softened. She knew about Ethan. Everyone in Mercy did. Small towns didn't keep secrets, only burdens. "You tell that boy I'm saving him a slice of pecan pie. On the house." Clara nodded, her throat tight. Kindness was Mercy's currency, but it couldn't pay for heart surgery. She slid off the stool, tucked the dollar into her pocket, and stepped into the dusk. Mercy was the kind of town where Main Street was lined with mom-and-pop shops, their windows glowing with Christmas lights even though Thanksgiving was still a week away. The air carried the bite of winter, and Clara pulled her thrift store coat tighter, her boots crunching on leaves that skittered across the sidewalk. She passed the hardware store where old Mr. Jenkins was sweeping the stoop, waving at her like always. She waved back, but her mind was elsewhere. On the hospital bills, the fundraiser that had barely raised enough for Ethan's meds, and the gnawing fear that she was failing her son. At home, a single-story rental with peeling paint and a sagging porch, Ethan was sprawled on the couch, his Spider-Man blanket tucked around him. His best friend Jamal sat cross-legged on the floor, the two of them giggling over a battered copy of Captain Underpants. Jamal's mom, Tasha, was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of chili she'd brought over, another act of kindness Clara couldn't repay. "Hey, Mama." Ethan's voice was bright, but his face was pale, his breath shallow. He'd been born with a hole in his heart, a defect the doctors had hoped he'd outgrow. He hadn't. Instead, it was growing worse, stealing his energy, his color, his future. "Hey, kiddo." Clara kissed his forehead, her lips lingering a moment longer than usual. "You two causing trouble?" "Only the good kind," Jamal said, grinning. At 9, he was all knees and elbows, with a gap-toothed smile that made Clara's heart ache for simpler days. Tasha poked her head out of the kitchen. "Clara, you eat yet? I made enough for an army." "I'm fine," Clara lied, her stomach growling. She couldn't take more charity, not when her pride was already bruised. Tasha raised an eyebrow but didn't push. "You let me know if you change your mind." After Tasha and Jamal left, Clara tucked Ethan into bed, reading him a chapter from The Hobbit. His eyes fluttered shut, and she watched him sleep, his chest rising and falling unevenly. She whispered, "A prayer," though she wasn't sure she believed in it anymore. Then she sat at the kitchen table, staring at the stack of bills, the numbers blurring through tears she wouldn't let fall. The next morning, Clara was back at Ruby's, pouring coffee for the breakfast crowd. The diner was loud with clinking, plates and the hum of conversation, talk of the high school football game, the upcoming Thanksgiving parade, and the new Walmart opening 30 miles away, threatening to choke out local businesses. Clara moved on autopilot, her smile a mask until a stranger walked in. He was tall, maybe late 40s, with a graying beard and a leather jacket that looked too expensive for Mercy. He slid into a booth by the window, his eyes scanning the room like he was searching for something, or someone. Clara brought him a menu, her usual, "What can I get started for you?" clipped but polite. "Coffee. Black," he said, his voice low, almost gravelly. He didn't look at the menu. "And whatever's good here." "Pancakes are a safe bet," Clara said, scribbling on her pad. "Bacon?" He nodded, then met her eyes. "You from around here?" "Born and raised," she said, wary. Strangers didn't usually make small talk in Mercy unless they wanted something. He leaned back, studying. Heard this town's got a big heart, that true?" Clara shrugged, thinking of Ethan, of the bills, of the dollar in her pocket. "Depends on the day." He didn't push, just sipped his coffee when she brought it, his gaze drifting to the window. Something about him felt off, like he didn't belong in Mercy's orbit, but Clara had enough on her plate without worrying about a drifter story. That night, she found a note tucked under the diner's salt shaker, addressed to the waitress with the braid. Inside was a $100 bill and a scrawled message. "For someone who needs it more." No name, no explanation. Clara's hands shook as she held it, her first thought of Ethan, her second of guilt. She couldn't keep it. Not when she didn't know where it came from or what it meant. She showed it to Ruby, who whistled low. "That's a blessing, Clara, take it." "It's not mine," Clara said, her voice sharp. "What if it's a mistake? Or worse?" Ruby sighed, wiping her hands on her apron. "Sometimes, honey, you gotta let the world help you." Clara didn't sleep that night. She kept the bill on her nightstand, its weight heavier than its value. By morning, she'd decided to find the stranger. Mercy wasn't big. He couldn't have gone far. She asked around, Mr. Jenkins at the hardware store, the librarian, even Pastor Mike at the church. No one had seen him. It was like he'd vanished, leaving only the bill and a mystery. Days passed and the money burned a hole in Clara's conscience. Ethan had a bad spell, his breathing labored, and the hospital called to remind her of the surgery deadline. $30,000. An impossible number. The 100 was a drop in a bucket, but it was something. Still, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that it wasn't hers to spend. Then at the diner, she overheard a conversation that stopped her cold. Mrs. Carter, the high school English teacher, was talking about her son Tommy, a senior who'd lost his dad to cancer last year. Tommy had been accepted to Ohio State, but the family couldn't afford the tuition. He was working double shifts at the auto shop, his dreams slipping away with every oil change. Clara knew Tommy. He'd been Ethan's reading buddy at the library, patient and kind, teaching her son to love books even when his heart made it hard to focus. The thought of him giving up his future hit Clara like a punch. She thought of the $100, of the stranger's note, for someone who needs it more. That night, Clara made a choice. She slipped the bill into an envelope, wrote Tommy's name on it, and left it in the Carter's mailbox with a note. "Don't give up on your dreams." She didn't sign it. She didn't need to. The act felt like a release, like letting go of a breath she'd been holding too long. Word spread, as it always did in Mercy. By Thanksgiving, the town had rallied around Tommy. The church organized a fundraiser, the hardware store donated supplies for a community auction, and even Ruby chipped in with free pie for every donor. Tommy got his tuition, and Clara watched from the sidelines, her heart full despite the ache of her own burdens. But the story didn't end there. On Christmas Eve, Clara came home to find an envelope on her porch. Inside was a check, $30,000, made out to the hospital for Ethan's surgery. No note, no name, just a miracle wrapped in plain paper. Clara sank to her knees, sobbing, the weight of $1 finally lifting. She never found out who sent it. Some said it was the stranger, others the town pooling their love in secret. Clara didn't care. She held Ethan's hand through the surgery, his small fingers strong despite everything. And when he woke up, his smile brighter than ever. Clara knew that kindness, like $1 passed from hand to hand, could change everything. Mercy, Ohio glowed that winter, its streets lit not just by Christmas lights but by the quiet, stubborn goodness of people who refused to let hope die. And Clara, with her braid and her tired eyes, carried that light forward, knowing she'd never be alone again.